and welcome to beautiful Zermatt. As you can see, I'm riding Scott Genius. Why would you choose to ride some mediocre trail bike over Propain Spindrift, you may ask? Well, I was left without any other option, since one of the components on my Spindrift failed horribly and quick fix was out of the question. But before we dive deep into what went wrong, let me just say, I had a blast riding Spindrift this season. Propain created something truly amazing, thanks to playful geometry and vertically mounted shock. Riding some rental bike with wonky brakes and gimmicky suspension can't even come close. But you didn't click on this video to hear about any other bike than Propain Spindrift. So, without further ado, this is my honest, long-term review. Switching over from Nukeproof Mega, I instantly felt at home and better than ever on this bike. Mallet setup was also a welcome change. Felt like I'm sacrificing nothing and gaining everything. Short back end is nice and playful, with a lot of space to maneuver over the wheel. While with 29-inch front wheel, bike picks up speed noticeably faster. And with additional suspension travel, long days at the bike park can be even longer, because fatigue kicks in much later. So far, carbon frame is holding up pretty good, despite unintentionally smashing it to rocks several times. Damage was done only to the clear coat on all occasions. Rear triangle feels more sturdy than front triangle for sure. However, sound of rocks from under the wheel smashing the hollow carbon tubes is quite horrifying. When designing carbon frames, a lot of compromises have to be made. Key parts of the frame are glued together, like bottom bracket shell and all threads, since carbon can be threaded. Pressing steel cartridge bearings into carbon parts also is an issue, since carbon is a softer material. A lot of buyers look past these drawbacks, thanks to the hype that industry created around carbon bikes. Personally, it's hard to justify having a carbon bike, except when I have to carry it to 3000 meter peak, where every kilogram counts. In case of carbon cracking, downtime would be enormous. That scares me the most. Every time I see an awful issue with Propain carbon bikes, my heart sinks, and there's a lot of those. Usually one side of the shock is attached directly to the frame, but not in this case, where shock on both sides is attached to the linkage. That makes the suspension design one of the most complicated on the market. However, performance-wise, it feels really good. But still, I was surprised how linear rear suspension travel felt when compared to an air shock. I guess you must sacrifice something for smooth feel of a coil shock. After using exclusively coil shock for several months, it was very strange riding bike with an air shock. Felt almost like a hardtail. Short effective reach and steep seat tube angle makes this bike very comfortable to pedal. I think overall people like Propain bikes, especially who never had one. Zeb Ultimate fork setup was quick and easy. 4 clicks of low speed compression to counter diving on the braking, high speed compression fully open, and recommended rebound setting from Trailhead app is usually a good starting point. However, I found compression knobs hard to read at first. They are not very intuitive. Dialing in the RockShox Super Deluxe Coil Ultimate was more difficult than expected, since switching from air shock to coil was definitely a learning curve. First step was to set up sag, which can be adjusted by changing spring and fine-tuned with spring preload. Ideally, spring should be preloaded minimal amount, since preload only affects beginning of the stroke. At first glance, looked like removing shock is a daunting task with this linkage design, but after removing it 3 times, I got quite efficient at it. In previous video, I mentioned that there were some cases where shock mounting bolts snapped when reinstalling the shock, so I was extremely cautious doing that. Information on Propain website about spring rates is somewhat inaccurate. I ended up with 50 pounds stiffer coil than recommended for my weight. I tried 350, 400 and 450 pound coils. Currently, shock sag is 20% and fork sag 30%. Even with 450 pound spring felt like the suspension is bottoming out too easy, so I had to compensate with compression. Currently I'm running 2 clicks of high speed compression and 1 click of low speed compression. With this generation, RockShox introduced a new adjustment called hydraulic bottom out. It affects only last 10 to 20% of travel, ramping up compression towards the end of the stroke. If adjusted incorrectly, it can feel like you are bottoming out even if you are not. So my advice would be to start fiddling with HBO only when you are overall satisfied with the setup. In my case, it's 1 click out of 5. Currently, without any bottomless tokens in the fork, suspension feels perfectly balanced. However, for bigger hits I definitely would like to swap to at least 50 pound stiffer coil, and maybe get the shock custom tuned to be more progressive. In the previous video I mentioned that it's impossible to adjust HBO with regular Allen key when shock is mounted like this. So I shortened it with angle grinder. Now I can adjust it, but only half a click at a time. In case of an air shock, it's extremely easy to judge when you are bottoming out, thanks to thin rubber ring. Unlike air shock, instead of thin rubber ring, this coil shock has a bottom out bumper, thick rubber grommet, which is designed to show sag, but not bottom out. Towards end of the stroke, it compresses and provides little resistance. Because of that, you can't judge bottoming out only by feel, and HBO can make it feel deceiving. That's why suspension adjustment is quite tricky. Despite all these minor inconveniences, I'm loving the suspension on my Spindrift. If you appreciate the honest content where I present positives as well as negatives, now is a good time to gently tap the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It costs nothing and helps me a lot, so thank you. Unfortunately, these awesome bikes are tainted with Acros headset components, which are infamous for poor reliability. Knowing that, I was extremely paranoid and checked for play almost before every descent, but in the end, that made no difference. If you own a bike with Acros headset, I strongly suggest to take it apart and inspect condition of the plastic compression ring. This applies to Propain, Canyon, Commensal and YD Industries bikes. In my case, plastic compression ring disintegrated, causing sudden increase in headset play. I was exclusively shredding bike park, and that kind of riding puts the biggest strain on components. However, root of this problem was a combination of incorrect headset spacing and top cap design. There should be sufficient gap between bottom of the headset cap and top of the steerer tube. According to some headset manufacturers, this spacing should be at least 3 mm. In my case, it was definitely less than that. Cap was almost touching top of steerer tube, so headset could not be preloaded enough. As a result, when compression ring disintegrated, headset bearing damaged steerer tube of my fork. Acros market themselves as a premium brand and definitely charge premium for their products. Plastic compression ring is not what I would like to find on a premium headset. So I decided to swap damaged Acros headset to very well regarded Hope headset. Here's the short comparison between Acros, Hope and Cane Creek headsets. As you can see, bearings are pressed into the cup without easy way to replace them. Replacement is done by sending headset to Acros. That means downtime of at least 2 weeks. And headset is not a component that you want to periodically pry out of the frame. In theory, these bearings should last longer, but in practice they are as durable as swappable bearings. Hope headset features metal compression ring, easy to install crown race thanks to this little gap, and if you are into visual customization, Hope offers a lot of different color options for you to mix and match. Optional shims allow to fine-tune headset spacing up to 3 mm. However, there are some weird things, like this enormous gap, and if you would like to use Hope headset cap, it will work only with special Hope bolt. All these custom parts add up rather quickly, making Hope headset quite expensive. Cane Creek 40 headset is pretty conventional, with easily replaceable bearings and metal compression ring built into the top cap. With the headset sorted, damaged suspension fork was up next. I decided to contact Propain about fixing this issue under warranty. Since I was comfortable doing repairs myself, I asked only for the new CSU, but it was not available as a spare part. Propain explained that a repair like this must be done by RockShox and cost around 300 euros. They agreed to arrange repairs for my fork without sending the whole bike to keep downtime as low as possible. I was pleasantly surprised when Propain offered to send me a rental fork for temporary use. Kudos to them for saving second half of the season. Downtime in total was around 1 month. Usually it takes 1 to 2 weeks for support team to reply to initial message. So I had unique opportunity to put RockShox Zep Select Plus fork through its paces. It's a solid alternative if you are on tighter budget. To say that I was not impressed how SRAM GX drivetrain felt would be understatement. Out of the box, shifting was horrible. Initial thought was that UDH is bent. After derailleur and UDH were replaced, shifting improved but was still far from perfect. I saw other people with exact setup complaining about this as well. It must be related to chainline spacing, cause the GX drivetrain on my Canyon Stoic shifts flawlessly. My recommendation would be not to cheap out on dropper post. Since Bike Yoke Divine, dropper was quite a disappointment and gave me a lot of trouble. Oil in the air chamber, lever sticking, dropper sometimes not locking in full extended position, oil loss. Owning this dropper was by far the worst dropper post experience I've ever had. Keep in mind that Bike Yoke Divine dropper is quite expensive, sitting pretty at around 300 euros. If you are looking to get one, go for Revive instead. It's around 50 euros more expensive but should be more reliable since it's completely redesigned. My initial impression about rubber cable guards was good, but after riding for a whole season that changed. Most of them slide down the cable and do nothing to prevent cables from rubbing the frame. Alloy frame features more conventional way of fixing cables with zip ties. In upcoming Spindrift generation, this will be sorted by routing cables internally through headset like in brand new Icano or Tai. Despite very clean look, headset routed cables would hinder ease of maintenance. In order to change top headset bearing, disconnecting, shifting and dropper post cables as well as brake hoses will be mandatory. That's hell of a lot of work for a simple job. Headset routed cables combined with infamous Acros headsets is a match made in hell. Magura MT7 front brake pads don't cover surface of the brake disc fully. Eventually this will result in nasty lip. Fork caliper mount is designed for 200mm disc. In order to fit Magura 203mm disc, 1.5mm spacer on each caliper bolt is required. Full caliper adapter is not needed since the difference is so small. Some people are complaining that the rivets on the brake disc get loose and there are no straightforward way to fix it. So far, I had no such problems. Other than that, performance-wise, MDR-P brake discs feel and look amazing. Spindrift came with 170mm cranks, which are way too long for my liking. I rarely pedal this bike, usually use gondolas, carry or push it up the hill. So I was looking to switch into 155mm cranks, but after some research decided against this drastic change. 165mm cranks should be perfect for me. In a year or so, most likely new Spindrift will be released, featuring cables routed through the headset and internally in rear triangle. bigger shock clearance to fit bulkier new gen shocks, and hopefully improved frame reliability. So keep that in mind. This pretty much sums up my honest long-term review. If any of it was useful, don't be shy, drop a like on this video, and until next time.